From the Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Zahra Syed. Our top story tonight. More than a dozen local Muslim community leaders gathered outside Minnesota's federal courthouse Wednesday morning with placards saying "Abandon Biden." The president was in Minnesota to tout his administration's support for rural communities, with several other protests planned. Biden won the state with a razor-thin 1% of votes. Community leader Jailani Hussein said, "This community stands on the side of life. We stand on the side of peace. We stand on the side of recognizing humanity of Palestinian children." He added, "We cannot ever elect a president who refuses to recognize the children of Gaza, who refuses to recognize the war and what is happening right now." Historically, Muslims have overwhelmingly voted for Democrats, Hussein said. However, he claims more than 50,000 Muslim voters will not be voting for Biden, noting that even non-Muslims will do the same. Hussein also said 66 Muslim leaders across the country have joined their call to not vote for President Biden next year. The United States is conducting what it says are unarmed drone flights over Gaza in support of Israel. Pentagon spokesman Brigadier General Patrick Ryder said in a statement Friday these were in support of hostage recovery efforts. Ryder also noted that the U.S. was also providing advice and assistance to support Israel as it works on hostage recovery efforts. The flights began after October 7th. Democratic Senator Dick Durbin has become the first senator to demand a ceasefire in the Palestine-Israel conflict, which has killed more than 10,000 Palestinians. During an interview with the CNN, Durbin has voiced his support for a ceasefire, emphasizing the importance of both sides agreeing to it. He also called for good faith efforts by Hamas and Israel with the immediate release of Israeli hostages by Hamas and the initiation of dialogue between both parties. Durbin's statements mark a significant departure from the Biden administration's and the broader Democratic Party's position on the ongoing bombardment of Gaza. It is particularly surprising, given Durbin's political history, being initially recruited by the American Israel Public Affairs Committee to challenge an incumbent in 1982. AIPAC's influence in U.S. politics has long discouraged criticism of Israel or sympathy for the Palestinian cause among politicians. President Joe Biden faced heckling from a rabbi during a campaign event Wednesday in Minnesota because of his stand on the Israel-Hamas conflict. Rabbi Jessica Rosenberg shouted while Biden was speaking, saying, "As a rabbi, I need you to call for a ceasefire right now." Biden responded, "There is a need for time to get the prisoners out." Biden said he has convinced Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to call for a ceasefire to let the prisoners out and talk to the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to open the Rafah crossing. According to White House reports, security escorted the heckler out as she continued to chant, "Ceasefire now." Biden said the situation is incredibly complicated for the Israelis and also for the Muslim world. The U.S. House has dismissed an attempt to censure Republican Rashida Tlaib, a Democrat and Palestinian-American. Tlaib has been advocating for Palestinian rights during Israel's conflict with Gaza. The censure resolution proposed by far-right Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene failed in a 222 to 186 vote, with 23 Republicans siding with and Democrats against it. The resolution accused Tlaib of engaging in anti-Semitic activity, sympathizing with terrorist organizations, and leading an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol complex. The latter charge referred to a peaceful sit-in by Jewish activists within Congress to demand a ceasefire in Gaza. Tlaib, the sole Palestinian-American member of Congress, rejected these allegations, characterizing them as rooted in bigotry and Islamophobia. She, along with other progressive legislators, recently introduced a congressional resolution urging an immediate de-escalation and ceasefire in Israel and occupied Palestine. Tlaib emphasized the importance of recognizing the humanity of all who are affected by the conflict. She also condemned the targeting of civilians as a violation of international humanitarian law. Tlaib criticized President Joe Biden and Secretary Antony Blinken for not calling for a ceasefire. She emphasized that collective punishment of Palestinians constitutes a war crime. Palestinian-Americans are taking legal action against the State Department due to delays in evacuating their relatives trapped in Gaza. According to the Arab American Civil Rights League, nearly a dozen lawsuits have been filed or are in the process of being filed against the State Department. Immigration attorney Maria Carey, who is involved in 3 lawsuits, expressed concern about the urgency of the situation in Gaza. Lawyers representing these families argue their clients received disparate treatment compared to U.S. citizens evacuated from Israel during the conflict. They are basing their legal actions on the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. Americans in Israel were provided with chartered flights and even a Royal Caribbean cruise ship for evacuation. Meanwhile, U.S. citizens in Gaza were repeatedly told to go to the Rafah crossing, where an evacuation has yet to occur. Nabil al-Shurafa, a medical researcher in Chicago, filed a lawsuit after his mother was caught in an Israeli airstrike while waiting at the Rafah crossing. The State Department has not confirmed the exact number of U.S. citizens in Gaza, with estimates ranging from 500 to 600 people. A U.S. Embassy spokesperson says officials are working with Egypt, the United Nations, and Israel to facilitate safe exits for the U.S. citizens and their families. Angelina Jolie condemns Israeli airstrikes in Gaza and calls for ceasefire. Details of the story comes after the break. Stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back. American actor Angelina Jolie has spoken out against Israel's attacks on Gaza that have killed thousands. Jolie, former Goodwill ambassador to the United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, criticized the international community for allowing the deliberate bombing of a trapped population. She expressed concerns about the dire conditions at the Jabalia refugee camp. Jolie took to Instagram to share her thoughts, posting an image of a recent Israeli strike in Gaza's northern region. She said Gaza has been an open-air prison for nearly 2 decades and is fast becoming a mass grave. She also blamed the complicity of world leaders. Jolie expressed deep concern for the innocent lives lost and called for immediate action to address the humanitarian crisis as well as an immediate ceasefire. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday refused to allow the supply of fuel into Gaza. The announcement came shortly after the Israeli army chief said fuel could enter the blockaded territory for hospitals. Earlier, Army Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi said Israel would allow fuel to enter Gaza via the Rafah crossing with Egypt, should Tel Aviv determine hospitals have run out of fuel. International organizations have warned that hospitals in Gaza are about to halt operations amid an Israeli blockade and lack of fuel. Reporters Without Borders, or RSF, has filed a petition with the International Criminal Court about alleged war crimes in the Israel-Palestine conflict. The Press Freedom Group is calling for a formal investigation into the deaths of 9 journalists killed in ongoing conflict. The group has highlighted that the violence has been particularly deadly for journalists, with at least 34 reporters killed so far. It emphasized that this is an unprecedented situation in the 21st century. According to RSF, at least 12 of these journalists were killed in connection with their work, mostly due to Israeli strikes in Gaza. The 9 journalists mentioned in the ICC petition include 8 Palestinian reporters killed in Israeli airstrikes in Gaza's civilian areas and an Israeli journalist killed while covering a Hamas attack in southern Israel. RSF argues these killings constitute war crimes under the Rome Statute of the ICC. The group says the bombardment of civilian areas in Gaza meets the definition of an indiscriminate attack under international humanitarian law. RSF has filed 3 previous complaints regarding violence against journalists by Israeli forces. It has also urged the ICC to investigate the deliberate destruction of more than 50 media outlets in Gaza since the current violence began less than a month ago. Dozens of people were killed in an Israeli airstrike on the Burej refugee camp in Gaza on Thursday. Footage shows mayhem after the airstrike as people were carrying their wounded relatives and removing bodies from the debris. Israel has launched more than 12,000 airstrikes on the Gaza Strip since October 7th, according to the Israeli army. Nearly 10,600 people have been killed in the conflict, including 9,061 Palestinians and more than 1,538 Israelis. Besides a large number of casualties and massive displacements of people, basic supplies are running low for Gaza's 2.3 million residents due to the Israeli attacks. As the attacks on Gaza from the air, sea, and ground continued for the 28th day, Palestinians' homes were destroyed or heavily damaged in the El Maghazi refugee camp on Thursday. 70% of the Gaza population now constitutes refugees living in different refugee camps run by the United Nations. British multinational retailer Marks & Spencer has apologized after its newly released Christmas advertisement was criticized for showing burning paper hats resembling the Palestinian flag. The company said it apologizes for any unintentional hurt caused by a social media post that showed red, green, and silver party hats in a fire grate. The controversial ad image shared on the retailer's Instagram page was accompanied with the caption, "This Christmas, do what you love, like saying no to paper hats." After deleting the post, Marks & Spencer said the intent was to playfully show that some people just do not enjoy wearing paper Christmas hats over the festive season. Egypt is building a field hospital near its border with Gaza amid ongoing Israeli attacks on the Palestinian territory. According to Egyptian media, the health directorate in North Sinai is working at full capacity to establish a field hospital for injured Palestinians upon their entry into Egypt. Osama al-Ghandour, Secretary General of North Sinai Governorate, said health facilities are ready to receive injured Palestinians once allowed into Egypt. 3 places have been allocated to accommodate those accompanying the injured in Sheikh Zayed and Arish cities. Muslim leaders in Latin America expressed disappointment with leaders of other faiths for not standing in solidarity with them amid Israel's relentless attacks on Palestinians in Gaza and the occupied territories. The Islamic Center of the Republic of Argentina publicly called out participants of interfaith dialogues for promoting hatred against Islam through their media publications. They also urged religious communities to demand an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, holding them accountable for rising Islamophobia in Argentina. Muslim leaders in various Latin American countries share similar concerns, highlighting the lack of support from religious organizations and pro-Israel bias in media coverage. The rise in Islamophobia is evident in incidents reported in different parts of Latin America, including aggression against Muslim women. Some churches have called for peace and dialogue between Israel and Palestine, but concrete actions such as a ceasefire have not been advocated. Latin American Muslim leaders remain committed to promoting peace, understanding, and interfaith dialogue in their communities. In Mexico, Sheikh Mohammed Mansour praised 2 pro-Palestine demonstrations that took place there, bringing together large crowds of non-Muslim activists. That's all from our Toronto studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.